All right, let's dive right into this explainer of the source material and unpack the brutal, fascinating reality of what it actually takes to own and operate an airline. You probably want your logo on the tail of a plane, your face in the in-flight magazine, and the pure prestige of moving people across the globe. But underneath all that glamour, it's honestly one of the most punishing financial structures ever created. Because you're entering an industry where you can take a human being, strap them into a metal tube, shoot them across a continent at 500 miles an hour, feed them, entertain them, and land them totally safely, and yet, U.S. carriers only make about $11.80 in net profit per passenger. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. Apple literally makes more profit selling a simple rubber case for your phone than an airline makes flying you from New York to LA. So our entire focus today is answering this one burning question. With tickets costing hundreds of dollars, why on earth do airlines only make an $11 profit? If tickets are so expensive, where does all the money go? Well, we're going to look at the setup costs, the operating burn, the revenue illusion, the fact that airlines are actually banks, and the razor-thin margins. Part 1. The setup costs. Before you even sell a single ticket or board one passenger, the barriers to entry are just staggering. Just to legally exist, you can't just go buy a plane. You need the Department of Transportation to declare you economically fit, which means holding enough cash to cover a full 3-month operational reserve before day one. When Breeze Airways launched, they had to raise $300 million just to get off the ground. Plus, federal law mandates 75% U.S. citizen voting control. Oh, and you have to hire 5 highly specific, incredibly expensive government-mandated executives, like a director of safety and a chief inspector, before you're even allowed to take off. And then, of course, you actually need the airplanes. Real transaction prices for a Boeing 737 or Airbus A320 sit between $50 and $65 million, so almost nobody buys them outright anymore. Instead, they turn to this massive $229.6 billion global leasing market. Usually, they'll choose an 83% majority standard dry lease, meaning you rent the plane but provide your own crew and maintenance, or they go for a wet lease, which is an expensive, all-inclusive package with crew and insurance thrown in. And we can't forget where you're going to land. If you want to fly into a major congested hub, say JFK or LaGuardia, you need a runway slot. These are strictly regulated by the FAA with completely ruthless use-it-or-lose-it rules. If you don't use your slot 80% of the time, it's gone. Because of this artificial scarcity, a single prime slot pair, literally just the right to land and take off, has sold on the secondary market for up to $75 million. That's not for a plane, you guys. That is just the permission to touch the pavement. Part 2. The operating burn. So now that you have your planes and your permission, you face the daily reality of aviation, which is brutal. Every single minute your plane is moving, whether it's pushing back or parking at the gate, full or completely empty, it burns $100.76. We call this the block minute cost. As you can see, it's devoured primarily by labor at about $35, fuel around $33, and maintenance taking up $18. Basically, every minute a flight is delayed on the tarmac, you're hemorrhaging $100. Let's break down that labor piece because the market is wild right now. Labor spans from $75,000 for regional first officers to well over $350,000 for wide-body captains. A pilot shortage pushed regional pay way up, while senior legacy wide-body captains easily clear $500,000 with profit sharing. Meanwhile, flight attendants, historically, weren't even paid during the boarding process. It actually took a historic 2026 United agreement to finally offer them half pay for that time, which really highlights this massive gap, where entry-level staff make around $27,000 on reserve, while top earners are taking home 6 figures. Then we've got the fuel trap. Fuel is terrifying because you have absolutely zero control over the price. Airlines get hammered by unpredictable crude oil swings and the crack spread, which is the premium refineries charge to turn crude into jet fuel. It can spike overnight. Airlines try to use high-risk financial hedging contracts, but if prices drop, they lose billions. Delta actually got so fed up with this that they literally bought an oil refinery in Pennsylvania for $150 million. People thought they were crazy, but during market spikes, that refinery generated up to $785 million in relief. Sometimes the only way to hedge your biggest cost is to just buy it outright. And then you have to factor in the maintenance tier system. You've got the A check, which happens overnight, the C check, taking 1 to 4 weeks, and then the absolute profit killer, the D check. Every 6 to 12 years, an aircraft is completely disassembled down to the bare metal. This D-check grounds the plane for 4 to 6 weeks and costs between $1.5 and $3 million. That is 6 weeks where your multi-million-dollar asset is earning exactly $0, while still costing you money to store and insure. Beyond massive haul and liability insurance policies needing to cover $5.2 million per passenger, airlines suffer a true death by 1,000 fees. You pay landing fees like $847 per 1,000 pounds at JFK, so roughly $600 to $700 just for a 737 to touch down. Then there are ATC and passenger taxes, like the 7.5% ticket tax and segment fees. To protect that tiny $11 profit margin, airlines have to become obsessively penny-pinching with catering. American Airlines famously saved $40,000 a year just by removing one single olive from their first-class salads. Part 3. The revenue illusion. With this massive cash burn, how do they make any money at all? It all comes down to yield management, because an airline seat is the world's most perishable product. The moment a plane pushes back from the gate, every empty seat represents revenue that is just gone forever. To combat this, sophisticated algorithms constantly adjust prices. They open cheap fare buckets early for vacationers and systematically close them as the flight fills up, making sure the last remaining seats are sold at the highest possible prices to desperate, last-minute business travelers. Even with that dynamic pricing, airlines get hit with $12 to $26 booking fees from global distribution systems. So to survive, airlines are now structurally designed to fly almost completely full. The global break-even load factor is actually forecast to hit a staggering 83.8% in 2026. If a plane isn't at least 84% full, the airline is actively losing money on that flight. They supplement this by hauling $158 billion in cargo beneath your feet and unbundling everything, charging you extra for bags, seat selection, the whole shebang. But what really makes an airline profitable? You might look at the packed planes, the expensive last-minute tickets, and the crazy baggage fees and think, all right, that's how they scrape together that $11 profit. But you'd be completely wrong. We're about to uncover the single most important structural fact in modern aviation. Part 4. Airlines are actually banks. The mind-blowing reality is that the biggest moneymaker at a major airline isn't flying planes at all. In 2026, Delta reported an astonishing $8.4 billion in annual revenue entirely from its co-branded American Express partnership. $8.4 billion. That completely dwarfs what many airlines earn from the physical act of flying people around. As the quote goes, the airline itself has become a marketing and data collection subsidiary of a bank. Here's the secret sauce. Airlines mint frequent flyer miles out of thin air at essentially zero cost. They're literally just numbers in a database. They then sell these miles in enormous bulk to credit card companies who use them to lure in high-spending customers. This is exactly why airlines pivoted their reward models to prioritize how much money you spend on your credit card rather than how many miles you actually fly. Part 5. A razor-thin margin. Airlines absolutely rely on those billions in credit card revenue because the physical act of flying is so incredibly fragile. The volatility of flying is intense. The global profit margin sits at a terrifying 3.9%, or about $7.90 per passenger globally. A margin that thin has zero cushion against shocks. Take Spirit Airlines. They understood the ultra-low-cost model perfectly, but were hammered by Pratt & Whitney engine recalls grounding their planes, regulators blocking a merger with JetBlue, and cutthroat basic economy competition. As a result, Spirit filed for bankruptcy twice by 2025. Just goes to show, expertise does not protect you from structural risk. Add to that the fact that cascading delays cost the industry $33 billion a year, and environmental mandates are the new structural threat. When you factor in the new DOT automatic cash refund mandate for delays and the $127 billion international CORSIA carbon offset requirements hitting by 2035, the volatility is truly endless. Every single shock chips away at that tiny $11 profit. When you zoom out, it becomes crystal clear. The planes are a cost of doing business. The real asset is in the wallet. The difference between throwing off billions in loyalty revenue and filing for Chapter 11 is a total knife's edge. The base business of flying was frankly never designed to be highly profitable on its own. The expensive jets, the slots, the relentless maintenance, they're all just a capital-intensive, brutally regulated cost of doing business to maintain a brand so people keep using those credit cards. So the question is, are you flying on a transportation company or inside the marketing arm of a bank? Next time you board a flight, cram your bag into the overhead bin, and marvel at the engineering required to hurl you through the sky, really ask yourself what business you are truly funding. Because that $11 profit they make on your seat is definitely not the whole story. Every time you swipe that co-branded credit card, you're the real reason they can afford to fly at all. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.